Ding dong, the witch is dead. Well, maybe not dead, but she's at least going to be out of our hair. Of course, I'm talking about Kathleen Kennedy. And when the news started to leak out last night that she was officially retiring by the end of this year, I wasn't very surprised. She's going to be 72 years old if she isn't already, and she's got some other issues out there floating in space, and one of them is named Gina Carano. I have a pretty good idea that she doesn't want to be around for the aftermath about, well, what's going to happen with a lot of discovery that's going to be coming down the pike, and, well, it's going to be rather embarrassing. Not that she isn't going out on the bottom, because she is. She's basically decimated anything that Lucasfilm had while still leaving everything intact over with Steven Spielberg's side of things. Wow. If only George had been told about the terrible coffee sooner. Anyway, this is quite the story. Let's jump in. Here we go. Now, of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't remind you about the subscriber drive that we're on right now. Let's see if we can push from 34,000 to 100,000 by the end of 2025. I think we can do it. I can do it with your help. So hit that subscribe button right now, turn on notifications, and while you're down there, hit the thumbs up, because you know you love Kathleen Kennedy's Gonna Be Gone. All right, let's jump right into, of course, the main course, which is the story of Lucasfilm boss Kathleen Kennedy expected to retire this year. Now, originally, this news had broken over on Puck Media by Matt Bellany himself, which means it's not only reliable, it's probably solid. It's something we had been expecting, but not necessarily something that was for certain this year. As everybody gets, well, older, we all expect people to retire. Well, with Kathleen Kennedy, it's coming this year. So the prolific producer, which is a pretend, if you ask me, because she relied on her husband and other better men to get where she was. She's presided over Star Wars failure and Indiana Jones failure, and through their ups and downs since 2012. Well, it's almost all been downs, let's be honest about it. The Force Awakens was a copy pasta of, well, a better film called Star Wars: A New Hope. Of course, everybody took a while to recognize this, and when they did, they realized it was a lesser copy. And everything from that point forward was pretty much a downer, with few exceptions. From the article, after more than a decade in a galaxy far, far away, Kathleen Kennedy is charting a course toward retirement. I cannot tell you the chorus of cheers and applause that I am hearing in my headphones right now. It's like an entire world is cheering. It's like the effects of a reverse Death Star on Alderaan. Instead of horror, they're all elated. Anyway, we'll keep going. The Lucasfilm boss has told associates she plans to retire by the end of 2025. Puck, of course, reported that. Reps for Kennedy and Lucasfilm did not immediately become available for comment. Of course not. They were not ever going to talk about this. There are reasons she's getting out of there, and it's not because, well, of good reason. Kennedy joined Lucasfilm in 2012 as co-chair alongside Star Wars creator George Lucas, and a few months later took the reins after Disney paid $4 billion for the company, and Lucas exited to retire and make us all miserable with what he left us. She relaunched the franchise, beginning with J.J. Abrams' Star Wars: The Force Awakens in 2015, a film that got much more praise than it deserved. And that grossed more than $2 billion globally and reinvigorated the property. It didn't really need reinvigoration, by the way, as a big screen brand. Disney released Star Wars film every year from 2015 through 2019, and then took a pause following Star Wars: The Rinse of Soybeans, otherwise known as the Rise of Skywalker, which is actually technically the Rise of Palpatine, which is why it's so disdained to this day. At least here, they acknowledge that it received a mixed response and earned just half of what The Force Awakens had brought in just a few years earlier, which means with what they spent, it lost money. That's right, a Star Wars film that lost money. Let's store that away for a while. It also killed the merchandise, branding, and pretty much everything else along the way, so it was an unmitigated disaster. As Lucasfilm boss Kennedy held one of the most visible and scrutinized jobs in Hollywood, and it was not always smooth sailing. It really wasn't smooth sailing at all. If you hear some of the behind the scenes stories, which you've heard from some of the channels in the Fellowship, you'll understand that basically this chick's a nightmare. She fired Chris Lord and Phil Miller as directors of Solo and basically had to get the film completely reshot. And it wasn't the middle of production, it was darn near the end when they brought in Little Richie to come in and solve the problem. That's right, Ron Howard, if you remember that, so you can't put the blame on him. Of course, the Hollywood Reporter mentions that the film lost money theatrically, and that became a theme from that point forward over there in Star Wars land. So she also sidelined Rogue One, a Star Wars story director, Gareth Edwards, replacing him with Tony Gilroy, who oversaw reshoots of much of the film. The film became a billion-dollar hit inexplicably because it was kind of a mess as far as I'm concerned, and other projects were promised that never materialized because, well, they were all bad ideas, and Kathy can't manage anything but where to put trailers and how to fund things. That's the extent of her producerial skills. The minute she decides to become a little creative, things go completely sideways. Of course, there's no Rian Johnson's trilogy, not that any of us are weeping about that, considering he made the most divisive Star Wars film of all. And the Benioff and Weiss set of films are nowhere to be seen, probably because the last season of Game of Thrones tanked so spectacularly. And to be fair, Daisy Ridley's upcoming return to Star Wars has been languishing in development, and for our sakes, I hope it never comes out, because it's a terrible, terrible idea, and we've already seen Plank of Wood Star Wars. The only thing that's actually on horizon is mentioned here. Coming up, Lucasfilm has The Mandalorian and Grogu from director Jon Favreau due out on May 22nd of 2026. That's a full year plus from this moment, and how that ends up is anybody's guess at this point. This is the first big screen outing for the franchise since Rise of Skywalker, and at least it's very much disassociated with Daisy Ridley, who, as we've seen, is terrible. Kennedy's storied career includes work with Steven Spielberg and husband Frank Marshall, with collaborations including Raiders of the Lost Ark, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, Gremlins, The Color Purple, The Goonies, Empire of the Sun, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and Back to the Future trilogy. And throughout all of this, she was carried by all these very talented men, and she had some of the worst ideas possible, according to Steven Spielberg himself. Of course, she was involved in every single Indiana Jones film, which concluded with the Dial of Destiny, and claims credit for 70 films and been nominated for 8 Oscars. I don't understand how or why, but it seems like if you're on a good team, you look like a winner. And unfortunately for all of us Star Wars fans, she's going out a loser, and we're left holding the bag waiting for something good for Star Wars once more. If you can't tell, I am not a Kathleen Kennedy fan. I truly believe she is the bane of this franchise and Lucasfilm in a broader sense. She literally killed all 3 things that she touched and chased one new IP out the door entirely. I feel bad for Willow, and I feel very bad for Indiana Jones, but I feel especially bad for Star Wars. But hopefully, there's a new galaxy far, far away in our future. On that note, I'm going to keep it short and ask you, what do you think? Now that Kathleen Kennedy's out the door, do you believe that things can improve? Do you think Star Wars could be better? Do you believe she's being driven out because of a lot of embarrassing things that happened on her watch, especially with Gina Carano? Do you think that is going to feed into kind of a mess and a stain on her career? Or do you believe that it was just time, that she just needed to or wanted to retire? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below. And as always, be sure to take care of yourself. Take care of others. Wash your hands because it's good hygiene. And until next time, see ya for real.